Good morning. Good morning to all of you radiant women out there who are joining us today. Welcome to day 3. Can you believe it? We are on day 3 of Reset the Airways. And if you are just joining us today, welcome to one of the best spaces on the internet this morning hour, I believe. And if you have been with us all week, you know that this isn't just about content. This is really about a space to reflect, to realign, and to rise to the woman that God is calling you to be. Quick introduction. I am Tynisha Woolley. I am a higher education professional by day and a purpose and soul transformation coach by night. And my life's mission is to help faith-driven women unlock the power and the strategy. Yes, the strategy behind their purpose so they can accelerate their income, impact, and inner wholeness. So, Reset the Airwaves is an interview series that I designed so that we could simply create an intentional space for women of all walks of life to pause and to get honest about where they really are, to realign with the woman that they are becoming. So, if you're new to the Purposely Made Life community, you might be asking, what areas of coaching does Tanisha focus on? Well, thank you for asking. I felt it across the airways. And so, if I could sum up for you the coaching areas that I've been able to help my clients get significant breakthroughs in is one, identifying their purpose, which can be different from your career, which is very important. Number two, healing emotional wounds that block the fulfillment of your purpose once you find out. And then three, helping women really to create leadership pathways in all area of their lives that are rooted in your purpose. So for me, the foundation of living a purposely made life is discovering your purpose and then letting it lead you in every area of your life. And so today's theme is something that I could spend days talking about. So I am so excited about the conversation that is going to take place today with our guest in just a few minutes. Today's theme is healing in motion. And we're taking a deep dive into something that goes, I believe, unspoken. And that is the intersection of fear, trust, and restoration. So healing is not just a quick fix. It's usually a movement. And in last night's evening Fireside Reflection, we talked about how the whispers of fear from a young age can grow into a loud voice that as an adult, it clouds the perspective about the truth of who God says that you really are. And the process of healing should meet you where you are in real time at every stage in your life, especially in those places where fear used to lead and now trust is beginning to whisper. So, before I introduce today's amazing guest, I just want to set the tone a little bit with a short teaching moment. There was a season in my life where everything looked aligned on the outside. Everything was going right. I was hitting all the outcomes, doing all the things. But when I really sat down and had a quiet moment with myself, I realized that I was leading from a place of depletion, from a place of emotional exhaustion. And although I knew the promises of God in my head, I knew that He had something more for me to do. I knew that He wanted me to walk with people and help them realize their potential, but I just felt disconnected. And I couldn't connect in my head the promises that God had shared with me with how I felt about them in my heart. And then I certainly was not embodying those in my habits and what I was actually producing. So that's when I discovered something that I now use with my clients, which is called the head, heart, habit model. We also talked about that last night. So if you did not catch last night's evening fireside chat, please go back and do so. Because when fear is driving the rhythm of your life, it often shows up as overthinking. So it starts with your thoughts in your head. Then it becomes emotional evidence and really what's going on in our heart. And that leads to self sabotaging routines or the habits that we engage in daily. But when we begin to heal, trust doesn't just sound different, it moves different. and it causes our actions to change. So when we begin to honor what we know, when we feel what we need to, when we build the habits that protect our peace instead of proving our worth, we're moving in a direction that makes us achieving our purpose unstoppable. So this is what we are calling today healing emotion. It's not just a destination, but it is truly a lifestyle of alignment. So, if you want to go deeper on the topics that we are sharing today and also what we shared previously in the week for Reset the Airways, I want you to make sure that you go and you sign up so that you can get the whole woman reflection guide, because that will allow you to journal a little bit deeper and to just get still with your thoughts. Now, today I want to introduce our guest for today's interview, Miss Francesca Davis. Miss Francesca Davis is a licensed clinical social worker, a dedicated mental health expert, a speaker, and founder of Revelation Counseling and Consulting. With a deep passion for helping individuals heal and thrive, she brings over a decade of experience supporting adolescents and adults through trauma recovery, addiction treatment, and emotional wellness. Francesca draws from her clinical expertise in EMDR, DBT, and motivational interviewing to provide compassionate, evidence based care. Her work is rooted in a commitment to helping others find strength and clarity in the complexity of the human experience. So, y'all, please help me welcome Miss Francesca Davis. Hello.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for having me. Happy to be
You
here.
are so welcome. I am so excited to have this topic. I know that you also love talking about healing, and so we're about to have a good time.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So without further ado, and just jumping right in, we're talking about healing emotion. So I want to start here and ask you, what does healing through trust actually look like in everyday life for you?
Hmm. Um, so the number one thing is strengthening my relationship with God, learning how to trust Him, His plans for my life, um, trust that He is ordering my steps, even when I can't see them. And it doesn't make sense to me. We just talked about that. Like, this doesn't make sense, but I trust you anyway. So I think the first thing every day is like putting God first. Like, the first thing I do in the morning is before I do anything else, I commit my life, I commit my day to God, and let His will be done throughout the day. So that would be the first thing in everyday life, is just committing your life to God every day, and putting Him first. I definitely think trusting, not think, but I know that learning how to trust yourself. So there's trusting your higher power, and then there's trusting yourself. And that might be a little bit difficult to do because we may reflect on mistakes that we've made, other experiences that we've had. And so it might not always come easy, but it is necessary as for your growth and development and forward movement to be able to trust yourself. And how do you do that? And so one of the things I had to learn was like not to dismiss what comes up for me. Like, whether my thoughts, my emotions, my even my body. What is my body telling me? Like, maybe it is telling me that I'm tired and I need to trust that rest is going to be good for me, not to just keep moving forward. So, really learning how to trust ourselves. This is how our body, our senses, this is how it communicates with us. This is how it lets us know what we need. And if we can tune into that, we can make better decisions. We can be able to, like, yeah, like just to make better decisions and know how to tend to our own needs. And I won't go deep into that. You know, don't get me started. But to tend to your own needs, and this also can help reduce codependency on outside external things, people, situations, substances. So really tuning into yourself is definitely helps. And this is a sidebar, sorry, but in addictions, we use an acronym called HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And so that helps if I can tune into myself. Maybe I just have these needs that have to be met. I don't have to depend on substances. I don't have to, again, depend on other people or situations. If I just tune into myself, maybe that's all that I need, and then I can be able to stabilize myself. So that would be one of the things. And another thing is, it's feel the emotion. Don't become the emotion, but feel the emotion. So I talk to my clients a lot about the duality of life. Good and bad exist at the same time. It doesn't mean it's all bad. It's okay if you feel a certain type of way, but we look for those silver linings, and can we find some type of good in life? Maybe it's not good here, but it's good over there. So I'll just being able to manage, my perspective on life, and understanding that we're, as a human, we're going to go through some things, but not everything is all bad sometimes. Or maybe it is pretty heavy, but just because it is heavy, I don't have to become that heaviness. I just have to figure out how to manage the heaviness, how to tune it to myself to be able to balance the heaviness that I feel. What does that mean for me? So, in everyday life, I think that these would be the ways that I would encourage others to tune into yourself and to establish greater trust within yourself.
I love that answer. I mean, it's really full. And I think that thank you for giving us some practical steps, because I think when we hear the word trust, sometimes that can feel really big and overwhelming. And where do I start? So I like that you said, start with God first, and then just tuning in with starting with yourself, and starting with yourself even physically before you
Mhm.
get to the emotional piece of it, because it can be difficult to try to name emotion sometimes, but even just starting with the physical piece of the rest in your body and listening to it is an amazing tip. And I think we're going to unpack that a little bit later, about what that means for some of that somatic um,
Mhm.
practices. And so you talk about let's talk about the a little bit about the emotional part of it, because I think it's easy to say that we trust God. And kind of like I was saying in my opening, it was easy for me to say that I trust God with my head and say it out loud and go through the motions, but I really was not able to connect with trusting God in my heart. And I feel like a lot of women can relate to that. So, why do you think women say that they can trust God, but not with their hearts? What is the disconnect between the head and the heart?
Um, I I would say that what we know of God is in our minds, but how we experience Him is in our hearts. And I think that's the disconnect. The Bible even speaks of His word, have I hidden in my heart so that I may not sin against Thee. We have to connect with God internally. We forget things like in a second. We be like, what was I about to do? Like, so this is why we don't there's not a lot of focus on the mind, but what we feel in our spirits is deeper than that. We say heart, but I think we can take that further and speak on our spirit as well. And so I think that is what would cause that disconnect. We have to focus on how are we experiencing God? How are we experiencing the word of God? So we have this Bible, it's there, and his word does not go back void. It's perfect in itself, but we don't experience that. Like, why do you think it's all these characters and all these experiences in the Bible? It's there to show us how to get through this life thing. But we want to pick out all the good scriptures and all of that. Like, no, look at the other parts of the story. That's what you need to focus on, because those issues that arise, that's the manual for life. When I'm faced with it, Job is a good example of that. And everything that he experiences and all of his losses, we're not exempt from suffering, but the scripture gives us a manual on how to get through our suffering, how to manage our suffering. And so I definitely think that, again, it's how are we experiencing God, not necessarily what's in our brains all the time. Not everything is logical. Also, we're trying to normalize or humanize God. And yes, we have
Mhm.
Jesus Christ, but even in his existence here, it's unexplainable sometimes. So it's how do you experience him? Like, and I think that's where the disconnect is that we're not really experiencing him. It's easier to trust the tangible than the intangible, right? And so I think this is why we have to work on increasing our faith. My chain, my mother got me. I wear. I can't take it off because of my nails, but this chain is 2 Corinthians 5:7. We walk by faith, not by sight. Like it's not going to. You're trying to use your senses, and I know you said we'll talk about somatic stuff, but you're trying to use your senses, and we can't always comprehend God in that way. And so I think
Mhm.
that is what creates the disconnect. But if you really try God, if you really experience, not try God, but experience God, you'll see all the different ways that He shows up, all the different ways that He cares for us on a day to day basis and provides for us, and all the other. Um, Adjectives that he has. We
Mhm.
can see all of that, and where we can experience all of that, and that is what sticks with us. So I think that's where our disconnect is why we can trust God up here. I know of him, I can read the word.
Mhm.
Are you experiencing the word? Have you
Mhm.
experienced God in your spirit, and in other ways in your day-to-day life that may not be
Right.
as tangible?
That is so good. Again, another good answer. And I think that when you say experience, I love that because that means that we have to take an active role in our relationship with God. And what that also translates to me is that we have to create a level of spiritual intimacy with God,
Mhm, mhm.
and knowing and understanding who he is and who he is to us specifically. How do those words in the Bible translate to who we are as women in experiencing this life? And so I think that um, another great question related to that, and this idea of this experience in creating spiritual intimacy with God, is that sometimes when we think about the word intimacy, that can often be related to some traumas that we've had in our past experiences as adults or even as children. And so, how do you think that past wounds can really block that idea of spiritual intimacy and spiritual healing with God?
So again, I do a lot of focus on the human experience, and understanding there's like parts of us, right? There is a spiritual part. There's also the human part. And going back to what I just mentioned about us suffering, like we're humans, we're going to go through things. And so I definitely think because of some of our suffering and human experiences, now we're talking about the brain. It's not so much the spirit, but we're talking about the body, the flesh now. And so what happens in our brain is we have this feedback loop. All right, information comes in, it processes it. It's supposed to go through the prefrontal cortex, which is like logic and reasoning for us. And then it goes to the amygdala, which is our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So our amygdala is our natural defense mechanism, right? This is how we protect ourselves ultimately in response, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, but this is how our brain interprets a way of protection. And then we have whatever type of behavioral or emotional reaction. And so, what happens when we experience trauma, or even if you have anxiety, or any other mental health condition, sometimes it skips the feedback loop is off, and it skips logic and reasoning, skips the prefrontal cortex, and it goes straight to, okay, this is information. Let's just again, do we panic? Do we freak out? Whatever the case may be. And so I think what ends up happening is that our trauma and distress, it interferes because now we begin to question God on why we endured certain experiences. Hypervigilance, which is a trauma response, like we're always on guard. So at this point, again, I've had an experience, I've had an encounter, and my amygdala is always active. We call it just hyperactive all the time. And so now you're always hypervigilance is the act of always just being on guard, always being in protective mode, lack of trust at this point. I can't trust anyone. And so I think that ends up unfortunately being projected onto God, where it's just kind of like, why would you allow this to happen? We hear these questions from other people like, well, if he's God, why would he allow this stuff to happen and all of
Mhm.
that? We find ourselves questioning him and not understanding him. And so I think we end up projecting, and then that interferes with our spiritual healing, because we're questioning God. And so this is why, as believers, strengthening our knowledge of the Word of God, because if we go to James 4, 1 and 2, he talks about count it all joy when you face various trials and tribulations, because it's the
Mhm.
testing of your faith, right? We're going to, again, the Bible does not exempt us from suffering. That's God's word. You're going to go through some things. And I think we miss that. We want everything to just be perfect all the time. We're not supposed to have issues. That's unrealistic, but I think that's what interferes with our healing, because now not only do I have anger or resentment or whatever negative emotion towards my experience, maybe even towards myself, but now it's towards God. So where can you go? Who do you go to? Who can you run to, right? If
Mhm.
if you need that healing, now there no one's safe, right? So it's very important for us. It's hard to accept, but we have to trust the process of life, and we have to trust God's plan for our lives. And how do we manage our perspectives? Yes, go to therapy. Yes, talk to a spiritual advisor, a coach, whatever it is, like process those things. But I think we have to be able to get to that point of separation, so we can understand God and everything He's having us experience in this life. But as long as we're blaming Him and we're pointing fingers everywhere, including towards ourselves, where can you get the healing from? How can you grow from this? And so I think this is why and how trauma can interfere with that healing, because it's not just, oh, this person or this situation happened to me, but it's God allowed it to happen to me. And now we're blaming God for these things, instead of praying and asking God for that revelation and understanding of why I experience these things and what I should be doing. What should I learn from this? Or even if it's not a learning experience, it's just the life that He has ordained for you sometimes. And so it'll be a testimony at some point, but because you got through it, you're here.
Mhm.
So we miss that aspect of it, which is fair. Again, you're human. So
Yeah.
all of this is honest, but it's a learning curve, but that takes
Mhm.
great faith to be able to trust God no matter what you're experiencing, to trust God.
Okay, so you just dropped a whole lot of gems in that on us, and I love it because when you start talking about science, like that is my gem. So I want to encourage other ladies to go back, watch the replay when she started breaking it down about the amygdala and all of the parts of the brain that are impacted by trauma. And take good notes because it is so true that some of the things that are happening in our bodies are not because just just because of our experience. It's really actually scientific, neurological things that are happening that we need to be aware of, so that we can also begin to have compassion and grace on ourselves and not guilt of why we think that we should be at a certain place, when really we need to just kind of pause and get the support that we need to address those items that are being impacted. And so I love also too that you said part of this is first learning how to trust ourselves. And so many times when we have had a human experience that is not quite what we wanted it to be, and now we feel a sense of failure or a sense of betrayal, whether it's professionally or personally, it's hard to find a point to begin to come back. And so, how can women begin to rebuild themselves when they've experienced, rebuild that sense of trust when they've experienced failure or betrayal?
Um, to read a part of it, well, okay, I would say that again, don't discount therapy. Again, a lot of our experiences too, we have to find the root cause of our expression sometimes, or like, why am I responding this way? And some of it might be a deep rooted connection to some past experiences.
Mhm.
So if you can resolve past things and understand these are separate events, that's kind of like what PTSD is, right? It's post trauma. You're not reliving the same
Mhm.
experience all the time, but it's a lot of the times it's the same emotional connection, and it still shows up every time this emotion is triggered. Then this is why I have then this whatever the reaction is, this trauma response, if you will. So I definitely think that trying to rebuild trust is first like understanding yourself better. And that's where the therapy kind of comes in at, like, why am I this way? Why do I show up in this way? And there's nothing wrong with that. Even if you don't go to therapy, I will say one of the things I did, people ask, do you have a therapist? God is my therapist, right? I sit
Mhm.
with him quite a bit. I pray uh, very frequently throughout the day, but there are times when he will sit me down and I have to face it. I have to look in the mirror to see what is showing up and then work on those things. So, accountability is going to be another thing where we have to be accountable for how we show up, and even the feedback that we may get from other people, things like that. Like, be accountable. There's nothing wrong with hearing these things, but it's okay for you to question yourself. Well, am I, should I? And that's okay to question,
Mhm.
but resolve it, and also be okay with the fact, no, it's not me, it's the other person. So I
Mhm.
take that very lightly, but I'm very big on like, okay, I got this feedback, maybe this is something, let me explore it, what's there, because it could be insight, it could be exactly what you need to know about yourself to be able to work on those things. And then this is how we grow, this is how we grow. So I definitely think that trusting yourself involves greatly understanding yourself as much as you possibly can on a bunch of different levels, right? But I think that would be one of the biggest things that I would recommend is get to know yourself, not what other people have told you. I mean, we take it all in and we filter. Take it in and filter. Take what you need, get rid of the rest. Not everything that people told you or placed on you is valid or that you should believe it, but other times it is worth exploring, right? It's worth that exploration. And so get to know yourself, and then that way you can work on the areas. This is like what I call that self inspection. Inspect yourself. Some parts of you, thoughts and emotions, are outdated. Maybe there are things that you need to get rid of. Maybe there are things that you need to fine tune or touch up or whatever the case may be. Inspect yourself, get to know yourself, and this is how we can start to build trust that I know me. I don't even, I know me. I know how I'm going to respond. So that if I
Mhm.
know that I have these trigger points or whatever, then maybe I'll be more discerning about the situations I involve myself in, right? Maybe I can start to trust myself better of not getting involved in everything or going everywhere because I know me, right? But a lot of times we put ourselves in situations and it's kind of like, do you even need to be here? But because you don't know yourself, you're just any and everywhere that you don't even need to be. So it's a bunch of different areas that we can look at, but self exploration is the number one thing and number one way I would say of getting to know yourself so you can establish that self trust.
I love it. And that is really what this whole entire series and this whole entire week is about, is really getting women to intentionally pause to be able to do that self exploration, that self reflection, and to really make it a priority. I know that sometimes we get caught up in the busyness of life, you know, and this is something that I often have to remind myself. I know that you probably have to remind yourself, is really just taking that time to sit and to be still and to notice what your thoughts are, notice what is triggering you. And so that's just such a good reminder that it's not a luxury to do the self exploration, self reflection. It really is a must if we want to continue to grow.
Hmm.
So I want to shift gears just a little bit and give you a very specific question, because we have a lot of leaders who are in our audience, whether they are entry level in their leadership journey, emerging, or even maybe transitioning to a higher level of leadership. And so I want to talk about the idea of building trust specifically as a leader. And how do you build trust, or how do you, well, let me phrase it this way. I feel like in the work situation, my philosophy is that you bring your whole self to work. And so, whatever is going on at home, whatever is going on in your community, it's going to impact how you show up in your presence at work. So, as a leader, how do you recommend one can be vulnerable without oversharing as to what is happening to you in your whole life that may impact how you lead and guide others?
Yeah, I do believe in self disclosure to a degree, because I do feel like it helps build rapport, connection, and trust. It establishes trust. But I definitely feel like we have to just be careful with that to the degree of countertransference. And so if I'm talking to someone and a bunch of stuff comes up for me, then that's worth me exploring. Like, why did all of this come up? How did that person trigger so much in me? And this is what we call countertransference. And so that will be our point of, again, let's do some self exploration. Where did that come from? Why did I feel like I needed to go that in depth, or um, you know, explain myself to that degree, or overshare that much information. So I think there's levels to it that we just have to be mindful of. But I don't think that we have to be so closed off, because that's, as a human, this is how we build connection through relation. But I do feel like we just have to be mindful, especially as leaders, to again, to not overshare, where we're crossing boundaries, where we're blurring the lines and convoluting the work relationship in some type of way. We don't want to do that. And again, if there's any counter transference where all of this stuff is coming up, now we have more personal things that we need to focus on. So as a leader, I think we should have empathy and compassion towards one another. And I definitely think that we should be building connection, but it definitely depends on the relationship and the positions and things like that, that we really have to be mindful of.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. So far, I think we've talked about how healing can happen in the mind, the spirit, and our emotions. I want to dive in. We touched on it briefly earlier, but I want to go specifically on, can you explain how healing can show up somatically or in the body?
How healing can show up in the body. Um,
Or I mean, trust. I'm sorry.
oh,
Trust or lack of trust. Sorry.
lack of trust or
Lack of trust can show up in the body.
oh, so yeah, you'll have these somatic responses, right? Like we talk a lot about vibes these days. And so I definitely think like if you catch a vibe, again, it's trusting what's coming up for you. When we dismiss ourselves, it's such a disservice to ourselves. We have to learn how to honor ourselves and what's coming up for us. And again, ask more questions, get more information, and that's fine. But to just ignore what is in front of us, what others are presenting, or the environment that we're in, this is kind of where we start to get into some murky water within ourselves, and even in the actual physical, like maybe you're not supposed to be here, right? So I think the trust, we can look at, I'll stick with it, but we can look at the vibes. Like you'll check the vibe, like I really don't trust this. Don't dismiss that. Don't dismiss that. Sometimes I do, when I'm doing EMDR, long word, long, I'm just gonna tell you the name, but look into it. But I am trained in EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So I do some somatic work. I am not a somatic therapist, but a part of this is in our processing. We'll have you hold the memory of that trauma or distress, and I'll ask you, where do you feel it in your body? So sometimes memory is stored, trauma is stored in certain parts of your body. So I've had clients, oh, it's in my neck, things like, well, when you understand their background, they were choked, or this is where someone may have slammed them, or abuse or whatever. They hit their head and hurt their shoulder, whatever. A lot of people, not a lot of people, but I've had a few clients that we kind of correlated to. These are more of the flight response, where they run away from things. They're always on the go, running away from situations that are too distressing. And so I find like they'll say my ankles, my knees, my feet, it's in my feet. And because they're always running, they're always running. So
Mm.
it's very interesting how the body and brain stores energy and stores memory as well. But this is how it can show up somatically. Anxiety is a big one. It shows up in the GI tract. So we used to hear, we won't hear it anymore, but like the bubble guts, right? For a lot of people, like or worked with a lot of individuals who, just a lot of chronic stomach conditions comes from having very high anxiety. So this is how it just shows up in our body. And I think it's from our experiences. It's, I don't want to say it's always, I get what you're saying about trust. But I think, again, when it comes to that lack of trust,
Mhm.
it's worth the exploration. Like, in what environment, what individual are you dealing with where it's like, no, something's off? Then trust that until you get more information. Don't dismiss it. Don't dismiss it. Always get more information. I tell my clients, I tell myself, what do you come with? Figure out, when you're dealing with
Mhm.
people, I need to know, what do you come with? And if I have the capacity to deal with that, we'll find ourselves just engaging and getting into experiences with individuals. And it's like, had I dug a little bit deeper, had I slowed down in my emotional reaction, or in my attachment, if I had slowed down with that, maybe I would have gotten this information. Maybe, again, some people are slick,
Amen.
but but maybe I would have gotten more information. And so this is what I'm saying. But you can tell something's off. Again, that vibe, or even you can
Mhm.
see it. Like, I don't like the way this person moves. Trust that. I don't like how this situation is, this organization that I'm working at. I don't like how they do business. Trust that and get more information. So I think a lot of the part of, again, the key thing is not dismissing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Trust what comes up for you. It is valid until you determine it invalid, right? Like that's a part of that work. But trust what's coming up for you, explore, get more information, and then you can resolve that. But don't just dismiss what you're saying. And I can, or what's coming up for you, but I can keep going with that whole thing.
I love that. So, ladies, Sprite and ginger ale and crackers will not fix everything. Okay. That is a sign that sometimes something is coming up for you that you need to seek support about. So, please don't ignore the signs, especially if you are having consistent signs. If you've had them for, days or weeks, like please go seek some support from your medical doctor or consider getting a therapist because your body is trying to tell you that it wants you to deal with something. It wants you to release something.
Mm-hmm.
So very, very good. Okay. One last question before we get to like a fun round. What are the signs that a woman is actually rebuilding trust, even if she doesn't feel confident?
Um, I think the it would be there's okay. The reason why this is a little different because it's not always big things.
Mhm.
They may be very subtle, and which is why I encourage get to know yourself. You'll see that you're moving differently, that you're thinking differently, you're managing differently, and so they may be very subtle signs. Okay, so which is very subjective to the individual.
Mhm.
But if I were to give an example, I knew that healing was being done as far as like some social anxiety is because as I worked through it, pushed myself in certain ways, God had stretched me in certain ways. And the more I did it, the more comfortable it is. I feel a little bit more comfortable. And then at the end of the day or the end of the experience, I'd ask myself, okay, you handled that out. Like I'll reflect on that moment or that experience. Like, okay, you handled that pretty well. You didn't do what you used to do. You didn't feel like your heart palpitations, like you had a normal rhythm. You didn't stumble over your words or all of the anxious things. Like you were able to engage and you showed up as your authentic self. Like you felt comfortable within yourself, which was very new. I didn't question myself. I felt very good. I felt comfortable showing up as myself. And so, again, the signs is not always these big signs. They could be very subtle, but without you tuning into yourself, you can miss it. And you would think that there's no progress at all when there actually is. So, we're looking for our emotional, behavioral, and psychological responses. Have they shifted? Are you noticing? Oh, well, when this came up, I didn't have as many anxious thoughts, like, or I didn't ruminate this time. I thought about it, I was in that moment, and then I didn't ruminate, I just let it go. That's a sign that you're starting to trust yourself, that you're starting to heal. Um, so, again, it's a lot of inner work. And again, getting to know yourself. You know how you were, how are you now?
Mhm.
What's the difference? And so we're looking for that difference in ourselves. So you can compare an older version of yourself to the newer version of yourself. And again, they may be subtle and it may take a long time. It is not the quickest process all the time. It may take
Mhm.
a minute for you to get there. Um, but I think it will be things like that. So to know that you're healing, again, I think it's all about how we respond. We're looking for those psychosocial responses and any differences in them. That will be your guide, the way to gauge how far you've come, how much further you have to go.
Mhm.
That's your gauge, but you will miss it if you don't check in with yourself. So,
Amen. So, ladies, again, we are encouraging you to take this time to be honest with where you are right now so that you can have a place to come back to so that you can celebrate your growth. But it's important to just have an honest reflection right now. So, very, very, very good. So, now I want to get into what I'm calling the lightning quickfire round. And so, these are just a couple of questions to get to know you on a more personal level. So, they're meant to be just quick answers right off the top of your head. You ready?
Sure.
Okay. So, this is the lightning round, the trust edition. So, what is your favorite grounding scripture right now?
Oh, right now I am heavy in the 23rd Psalm. It keeps me calm. um, it just gives me. I don't. It just it just creates a space of peace within me. So right now I'm heavy in the 23rd Psalm.
That is always a good one, a good
Mhm.
grounded one. A daily soul care practice that's non negotiable.
Non-negotiable. Self-care. Honestly, I just try to manage my schedule a little bit better these days. And so I don't start work, even my administrative stuff. I don't do that before a certain time. Like I allow myself to wake up again to pray, to do anything else that I want to do. And then it's kind of like, okay, now I'm ready. So it's more so like nothing comes before me. Like I don't tune into other things or other people before I tune into myself. So that's my daily like non-negotiable where it's just like, I have personal business hours, not just professional business hours, personal business hours. Yeah, we don't start until this time. So
Protect it at all costs. Yes.
listen,
Who is one person that you trust implicitly?
the Lord.
Got it. What's a phrase you whisper to yourself when doubt creeps in?
Well, again, so we just talked about the shift. And so for me now, it's I focus that shift for me was more acceptance. And so now I just focus on thy will be done. I accept life. I know I can't control everything, nor do I want to. That's a lot of work.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
some anxious people, you're working harder trying to control the uncontrollable. However, so for me, I just say a lot. Thy will be done. It's the Lord's will, whatever it is. I'm just yeah. I trust Him with my life. So it is what it is.
That will be done. That
Yes.
will be done. So, on that note, our ending question that I'm asking every guest is, what does it mean for you to rise right now in this season?
Oh, so to rise right now for me, um, it started with seeking clarity, and getting to know myself and what God's will it was for my life. And once I sat with that, connected with God, now it's like, okay, keep moving forward. So for me to rise is just to keep moving forward. I got the revelation, and so I am just trusting God, being obedient would be another thing as well. So just be obedient, trust the process, but no matter what, keep moving forward. Life is not a linear process. We'll have a little bit of back and forth. We can normalize that, but go back, keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. So to rise is yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
I love it. Well, where can they find you, Francesca, if people want to follow you to hear more about the work that you're doing and just more nuggets?
We're gonna drop more nuggets. Let's start there, people. But you can find me on IG at the Revelation Counseling, on Facebook, Revelation Counseling and Consulting. I have a couple of videos on YouTube, but you can go there too. So it's at Revelation Counseling. But my website, revelation-counseling.net. So just a lot of revelations and counseling.
Well, thank you so much, Francesca, for having this soul conversation with us and just sharing your heart and your wisdom with us. We really appreciate you being here today with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, talk to you later.
Bye. Thank you.
All right, y'all. What an incredible interview that we have just had. And I know myself, I'm going to go back and watch it because there were just so many things to dissect in that interview, so much wisdom that Francesca dropped on us. So I definitely encourage you to go back and watch the replay on that. And I just really feel that today was not just an interview, it was really an invitation to just get real with yourself about where you are in your healing process. And remember that healing doesn't always have to be loud, that it can start with little steps. It doesn't always happen overnight. You know, sometimes healing happens in motion. Sometimes it unfolds through steady trust, through honest reflection. We talked a lot about that tonight and then just, or today, and then just taking brave steps, taking little steps that will lead you to an additional step. So if today's message stirred something in you, I want to encourage you again to download the reflection guide so that you guys can go a little bit deeper, can have the space to journal, and even sit and listen and ask yourself, you know, is my career aligned with my calling? Am I leading from a healed place or a hidden one in every area of my life, whether that's professional or personal? So sign up to get the guide. And if this resonates with you, these questions about where you are in your healing place, I also want to gift you with my purpose and career alignment assessment so that you can begin to decide and to discern, are you in the right place or should you be making different moves? Does your soul feel aligned with where you are now, or do you need to take a leap of faith because fear is still calling the shots? So I want this to be a moment that you maybe stop shrinking where you are and you start healing and you start living your blessed life. So I will see you guys tonight for the fireside chat. Join me at 6 p.m. Central, where we are going to dive in a little bit deeper on this topic. Until then, have a great day.